It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Brouhaha. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee coming to you tonight. A little different setup we got there, Dale. Some strange stuff going on. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Marshall. How you been doing?
Well, I hadn't been doing too good. Just had me a case of that RSV.
I noticed that,
Yeah.
and it's probably it's a bad time to get under the weather, as they say, during Thanksgiving. But I know that you. I just know that you're just a comeback guy. You come back and you affect everything. You put every obstacle in life, and you're ready to roll.
Well, I'm inspired by your optimism and confidence in me to do that, Dale. But, I do want to say this, folks. I mean, this RSV thing is real. I had no idea. I'd never heard of it till a couple of weeks ago, and then I got it last week. And I just want people listening to know, if you got children, babies or old people like me, 60 or older, be careful, because I'll tell you, I had COVID several years ago, and I've had this. RSV was a lot harder on me than COVID. So you folks out there, be careful. You too, Dale. That's why we're doing this interview remotely. Well, listen, Dale, let's start.
Long distance.
Yes, sir.
Long distance. Is it long distance from where you are to Whistler?
Well, it depends on the mode of travel, in my opinion. If I'm walking, that's a pretty fair piece.
Yeah, I got you.
Well, listen, let's start off like we typically do. I've been looking at your sideline view, and, of course, front and stage, first paragraph. The 120th playing of the Egg Bowl, man, Thursday night. What a great way to spend Thursday night watching the Egg Bowl.
It's going to be a good one, isn't it?
Well, they usually are, and I tell you what, you just really never know what's going to happen. We've talked to some folks about it. Our guest, I believe, we'll get to that in a minute, is probably going to talk about it. We had Gary Sigler on here a year ago who'd made 50 in a row. And he talked about some of the things he's seen. You got a particularly favorite moment in Egg Bowl history?
I think you have to go back to 1983 and the most unusual Egg Bowl that I ever attended in person. It was played in Jackson, Mississippi. It was kind of a stormy day that day. It looked kind of bad for a little bit, and wind was blowing really, really hard, like over 40 miles an hour,
Yeah.
Some people say it was near 50. But anyway, Mississippi State jumped in front of Ole Miss like 23-7. And really they had about, I think it was 23-0. And there was about a minute to go in the half, and Ole Miss was, State had to punt with about a minute to go. And so they punted the ball. And there was a guy from where I was sitting, you could just see it perfectly open. Anyway, there's a guy from Taylorsville named Timmy Moffitt. And this was Billy Brewer's first year. And I don't know if you remember much about Billy Brewer's first year, but they lost like their first 4 or 5 games, and then they had won 5 in a row. And so they were getting, this was if they won, they got to maybe go to a bowl game. And so, they needed a win very, very badly. And State wasn't having a good year. They were like 2-6-2. But State just dominated up to that point of the game. Moffitt took that punt. Now, what was odd about the punt, Ole Miss went for the block of the punt. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, they were trying to block the punt. So Moffitt's back there basically by himself. And they punt him the ball, and he gets by the first 3 or 4 Mississippi State guys, and listen, then it was like it was like one side of the field was all Ole Miss guys, and Moffitt was running right behind them.
Oh,
State
man.
guys were all in the other end. Well, that made the game 23-7. Well, then Ole Miss kept coming back, and then I think in the fourth quarter it was still 23-7. But all of a sudden, Ole Miss scores, and then the next play they intercept the pass, and they go in for a touchdown, and all of a sudden it's 23-21. And then they force State to punt, and I think Ole Miss goes down and kicks the field goal, maybe with about 4 or 5 minutes to go in the game, and they go up 24-23. And so then the Ole Miss kicks off, and State starts going right down the field, all the way, and they get down to about the 15-yard line, and they start, just kind of taking their time, and then they're going to bring Artie Crosby on to kick a field goal, and the wind is to the back of Artie Crosby, so he might have made a 50-yarder that day. And so Artie gets ready to kick the ball, and it goes straight up and gets to the goalpost. High in the air. And all of a sudden, it just drops like somebody has dropped something out of a 15-story building and did not go through.
And
everybody was just sitting there. What in the world just happened? Well, about that time, half the crowd was cheering and half the crowd was sitting there in shock,
The immaculate deflection.
Just happened. Yeah. So the game ended up 24-23. But that was the weirdest game I've ever seen up there. I mean, it was just really, really weird.
Dale, that's probably about as weird a game as you can see anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a game since or anything close to that rivalry, except for maybe the, what was it called, the kick six, Auburn and Alabama.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, Saban tried to kick the 60-yard field goal, and his lineman couldn't get down the field fast enough. And Auburn was just running by him, man. They had the return team.
That was something.
And Alabama had probably the only mistake Nick Saban's ever made in his life. Huh?
Probably so.
And so. That was another unique game that I've seen. These rivalries. I don't care if you're like 1-10 or 1-9, and the other team is 9-0 or 10-1, whatever what it is. It's just a different feeling. It's like, they're playing with house money.
Yeah.
I mean, State's playing with house money this week,
Yeah.
Kiffin's used that expression before in a couple of, hey, man, we won 9 games. We're playing with house money. Well, I guarantee Mississippi State's playing with house money this week because they have nothing to lose. They can gamble everything they've got.
And they got their quarterback back.
But they do have a lot of, and they got their quarterback back. And, he looked a little rusty Saturday, but he made plays when he had to.
Yeah.
And I think he inspired them by just him being in there a little bit, the offense. Because they scored 41 points. I don't know if they scored 41 points this year.
Yeah.
So, and Southern Miss doesn't have a bad defense. Now they have, it's a work in progress. Yeah. But they've been playing pretty good ball lately. Yeah. And, it was just one of those things, and it was close there. It was 26-20 there in the fourth. I think Ole Miss has opened up a 10-point favorite, which it's probably about what it should be.
Yeah.
But it's a road game for Ole Miss, so that's different. But there's 2 things in play here. I put in my column. First of all, State's got a chance if they win to go to a bowl game. They will go to a bowl game the way it's looking now amongst the SEC teams, because I read a report today where we're not even sure that SEC is going to have enough teams to fill all their slots in the bowl games. And so the other thing for Ole Miss, a 10-win season gets them in a New Year's Day bowl, which I'm hearing the Citrus Bowl really wants them. And then the other one is that they could possibly win 11 games for the first time in school history if they would win a bowl game.
Well, last year was their first 10-win regular season ever.
Yeah. So this game is important to both teams. So I look for a great ball game, and I'll be like you. I'll be on the couch after eating turkey all day long and getting ready for a great ball game around 6:30 Thursday night.
Yes, sir. We had a big one last week with Alcorn defeating Jackson State. That was a big one last week.
Yeah, that was that was another rivalry, and I think Jackson State kind of hurt themselves, made a lot of penalties, and turned the ball over a few times. And Alcorn's a good football team, and they both ended up with 7-4 seasons. And Of course, neither one of them will be able to go to a bowl game this year or any playoffs. But 7-4, it's not a bad season, and it was probably a pretty good season for Alcorn, and it was probably a disappointing season for Jackson State fans.
Dale, we're getting a little short on time for this opening segment. Anything else in this sideline view you want to throw out before we get our guest introduced?
I don't believe you might discover something there that I touched on. I know we talked about Delta State's playoff run, and Belhaven finally got beat. And I think the junior colleges wrapped up, and East Mississippi won another state championship.
There they go again.
And so, they always find they're always playing their best ball right now. They may start out slow like they did this year.
Yeah.
I think they start out 1-2, and then they've just run the table since. And so they've had another great season.
Connerly Trophy.
Taylorsville, Ty Keys made a heck of a throw there in the last minute of the ball game, and so that was probably a great ball game. I think it ended about 27-20.
That's it.
And Colin had a tremendous season. They surprised a lot of people.
Yeah. That was a great game. Ty Keys, a guy from the area we followed, went to Southern, moved on. But how about the Connerly Trophy coming up?
Connerly Trophy, yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. There's not anybody that really has just, blown everybody away like last year when Quentin Junkins from Ole Miss, he was kind of the hands down favorite.
Right.
I like the kid from Delta State.
Yeah.
I think he's had a great year, and
she got
also I think the quarterback up there threw 6 touchdowns last week. But also, I really got a lot of respect for Frank Gore Jr.
Man,
he has hung around Southern Miss through some bad times, and I'm going to tell you what, when he's playing well and he's got everybody keying on him, he Mississippi State the other day, he comes to play. I really admire that. I really admire that.
He's a rare bird. And he's filled with. I say he's a high character guy, man. He's a pleasure to see. He really is.
Well, you don't hear a lot of boasting from him, and you don't hear a lot of negative things about him. Yeah. So that's always good too.
Dale, who we got lined up to talk to us tonight?
Well, we got an old sports writer friend of mine from Reading. A lot of people might remember him in the mid '70s. Matt Gordon. Mm-hmm. And then Matt went on, started a little weekly newspaper up in the Delta at Leland, Mississippi. Then he started what they call the Ole Miss Spirit, which is still going on 40 years later. He was one of the original creators of it.
Yeah.
Him and Chuck Runsville. And then he ended up getting into the political end of it at the Clarion Ledger, and then ended up working for the Mississippi Legislature as their public relations director. Yeah. And now he's retired. He's living in Georgia. He's originally from Macomb. His claim to fame is that he led the Macomb Little League 12-year-old All-Stars to the state championship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's one that he'll remember forever. Well, listen, Dale.
That's probably.
I hate to cut you short, but let's take a break here from a sponsor, and then you and I will be back with tonight's guest. We'll be back right after this break with Matt Gordon. See you in just a minute.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Matt Gordon. How's everything, Mac?
Good morning, Dale. How's everything out there at Whistler, Mississippi?
Everything is being good this week. We got Thanksgiving on a couple days on Thursday, and we're really excited about that. Have all the family in.
Dale.
Yes.
Dale, I use Highway 84 a lot going between Georgia and Macomb, Mississippi, because I live in Georgia and I go into Dothan, Alabama, Enterprise, Alabama, Andalusia, Monroeville, and all those places across 84. and then I wind up, coming by Whistler, Mississippi. And if I blink, I miss it. What's the story on Whistler?
I have no idea. It just sounds better than Beat 4 sometimes.
I like that Beat 4 school out there. I used to cover Beat 4 when we were at the Meridian Star and all that. I've been to Beat 4.
Yes, sir, baby. That's a great place to visit.
That's God's country out at Beat 4, Mississippi. There ain't no doubt about it.
Yeah, well, we got a Buddy's truck stop now, and it serves great food. We got a Dollar General out there, and got a Ramey, so we're big time now. We're big time out there. So anyway,
y'all are doing well out there.
Yes,
for sure. Well, what's going on the Mississippi prep scene tonight?
We want to talk about the egg bowl Thursday night.
Yeah,
and we thought
let's do that.
You've had a lot of experience. You're the one that helped create the the Rebel Rat. What was it called to start with?
Oh, the Ole Miss Spirit.
Ole Miss Spirit. Okay. Yeah. I remember.
Dale, we created that publication in 1982, which means it is now in its 40th year of publication under the famous Chuck Lonzaville. Do you know Chuck?
I do. I've met him a couple of times. He's actually come to Waynesboro and spoke to a group of Ole Miss fans one time, and I interviewed him. And so, Well,
that was 40 years ago last year, and it's an amazing thing that publication, some of those publications don't last forever.
No, they don't.
Like the Ole Miss Spirits don't make it. Looks like it.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the first products like that. I remember they used some guy in somewhere around Florence or Brandon used to send out just like a newsletter every month. And, then
that's right. I've forgotten who that is. Was that Jack Stewart?
I'm not sure, but but you could get that, and of course then the Spirit got publication, and I thought that was a great one. I remember being in the Grove one day and people were passing it out. And I guess
that's how we got started with it. We had the very first edition. We handed it out in the Grove.
Yeah.
And 1 week later, to show you the enthusiasm for college sports in Mississippi, we had 500 paid subscribers 1 week later.
Wow.
That was
it was a phenomenal thing, I tell you.
Yes. And so let's talk about some of the egg bowls that you've attended. Do you remember your first egg bowl?
Well, no, my first egg bowl would have been with my father when I was a small child, because he not only wrote all the news that was in the Macomb newspaper, he also covered the sports for a long time, and I went to a lot of football games in Oxford and at Starkville with my dad. And so I'm sure that I attended many, many years ago. But one of the great things in my life, a lot of people can relate to this, is listening to the Egg Bowl with Jack Crystal on the Mississippi State microphone and Bill Goodrich on the Ole Miss microphone. And then, of course, came along, other people like Sam Torgerson and now David Kellum. I saw David Kellum at a distance last week in Athens, Georgia. I tried to get his attention. I was sitting right near the booth, but I never could get his attention. David Kellum has developed into one of the better play-by-play announcers in the league, I think, Dale. What do you think?
Oh yeah, he's a good one. His grandparents actually lived in Waynesboro at one time.
Is that right?
Yeah, they were Kellums.
Yeah.
He actually told me that, and I'm close friends with Harry Harrison. I think Harry does a great job on the color side of it. So I think Ole Miss has got a really good team.
Yeah, Dale, talking about Ole Miss and the Egg Bowl, that game when Artie Cosby's kick was blown back from across the goal post, and Ole Miss won that game. That reminds me of how interesting and exciting that game used to be. Well, it always is exciting, but I always liked that game when it was played in Jackson, because that took a little bit of the edge off of it as far as the fans. I thought, Ole Miss people generally don't care about going to Starkville and vice versa. But when they gather in Jackson, that's a different situation. I kind of wish we still played that game in Jackson, but I can tell you this, that'll never happen again, will it, Dale?
I don't think so, because I think Jackson State's taking kind of control of that stadium, or they have control of it. But no, I kind of agree with you. There was some always an upset or two. One of the teams may come in there like at 7-3, another one be 2-6, and 2-6 team ended up surprising them. One of the games that I remember, Ole Miss was a big underdog to Mississippi State, and John Fourcade scores on the last play of the game. Exactly.
I remember that game, and Jack. Dale, the thing about it is, the point spread and who the favorite is in that game literally means absolutely nothing. Anybody who believes that Mississippi State can't beat Ole Miss this Thursday is just doesn't know what they're talking about. That game could go either way. It's at Starkville. Mississippi State might be an underdog of some sort, maybe 10 points, I guess. But they are fully capable, especially under this situation they're in right now. They might get fired up for this interim coach and play lights out and upset Ole Miss. Well, on the other hand, Ole Miss, might be a little perturbed after getting embarrassed last week at Athens, Georgia. And I can assure you, I sat there and it was embarrassing. But they may get fired up and come back and whip Mississippi State into submission. Who knows? That's the point right there. Nobody knows, Dale.
Well, you just brought up an interesting turn, and I know we're talking about the Egg Bowl, but what are your thoughts about how does Ole Miss rate now in the SEC, considering that Georgia and Alabama seem to have separated from everybody else, and then there's kind of a log jam down there in the middle between Ole Miss, Missouri, maybe LSU, and I'm not sure who else right now. I want to put Tennessee in there. But Tennessee lays an egg on every road trip, it seems like, it does. There are people, I watch a lot of these sports shows on television. There are some people, for some reason, believe that Tennessee is going to be able to compete with Georgia tomorrow. I don't believe that for one moment. I expect Georgia to run Tennessee out of its own stadium. This Georgia football team, Dale, plays just about flawless football. Their quarterback has just become this great quarterback. Their defensive and offensive lines are terrific. Alabama is right there with them, and like you say, they have separated from the rest of the league. Now it's going to be different, obviously, when Tennessee and Texas and Oklahoma enter playing next year. You would think that Texas and Oklahoma will be able to compete, right there with Alabama and Georgia. I'm not so sure of that, although Texas did beat Alabama this year. What are your thoughts on that, them two coming in too? Well, I got another question for you before I answer that.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you think Texas A&M had a knee-jerk reaction because of the fact when they fired Jimbo Fisher, because they are concerned about the Texas-Oklahoma addition to the conference?
Well, everybody says that, but the fact is Jimbo Fisher was not getting the job done out there. Apparently they have recruited, as well as anybody. Georgia has been the recruiting leader in the conference for several years. But, A&M always has a great conference, recruiting campaign. And look at the football players, the high school football players in the state of Texas. I just think he was not getting the job done on a progressive scale. And that athletic director, I think the other two students coming in had something to do with it, but that's not the reason they fired Jimbo Fisher. They fired him because he's not getting the job done, and they're paying him a lot of money to do the job.
I got a question for you.
And they're going to pay him a lot now while he sits on the bank fishing, I think.
This is kind of a dark twist on this thing. But I heard Terry Bradshaw say something years ago when they were winning those Super Bowls. He says, it's hard to be hungry with a ham on your back. And maybe some of these coaches, these big buyouts, got too much ham on their back, and they're not hungry enough to do the work that needs to be done to get the job done.
Marshall, that's absolutely right. Them sums of money that we are paying these college football coaches is so outlandish. It's almost embarrassing. What in the world? Why? I have never been able to figure out from years ago to now. Why are we paying these people these kinds of sums of money? I just never have understood it. I'll be honest with you.
I don't. Go ahead, Dale.
Well, I don't really know. I just know when Steve Sloan was hired at Ole Miss back in the 70s that he got one of the biggest contracts in state history. It was about $28,000. So it's gotten out of hand, you know.
I can remember covering Ole Miss back then. That was before the Ole Miss Spirit, although we came along just about when he was a coach, the publication did. But I can remember the Ole Miss athletic director saying that we had just hired the finest young football coach in America when they hired Steve Sloan. I'll tell you what Steve Sloan should have done in his career. He should have been a professional golfer. That guy could have played on the pro golf tour without a shadow of a doubt. He was a tremendous golfer. That's where Steve Sloan should have made his money and could have.
Yeah, and I remember back in those days, too, a lot of Ole Miss fans fussed. He was playing too much golf. That's why he wasn't winning, you know.
Playing too much golf.
Playing too much golf, you know. And he said, I don't play too much golf, but I do play it, you know, because I think it helps me relax. And he said, we got a tough, but now he had a great staff up there that first couple of years he was there. He had Romeo Cornell, and, you know, Bill Parcells was on his Texas Tech staff, and he almost came to Oxford. And, you know, he ended up going to Air Force as their head coach. So, you know, I mean, he had some great assistants. But listen, I remember when you were at the Meridian Star, you had a great staff of sports writers that went on to become Mississippi legends. Why don't you tell us about a few of those?
Well, I did. I had Billy Watkins, who I hired straight out of Ole Miss. He gives me a lot of credit for his career. There's nothing to that. Billy Watkins has this natural writing style. He doesn't sweat whatsoever trying to get a ball game written up. And that guy had the most easy flowing style in sports writing in Mississippi history, I think. And of course, he's turned out to be a really good writer. David Rayner, who wrote for various publications and became really a fine outdoors writer, one of the best in this part of the country. I had Billy Turner on that staff, who became sports editor, actually the sports editor at the Times-Picayune in New Orleans after he left Meridian and Jackson. We had some local guys who helped us. We really had a good staff, but we were trying to cover about 80 high schools, guys. We were covering, you know, everything in that whole area, all the way down to the line on both sides, and north and south, and you know, it was just a great period to be a sports writer. Mississippi, I always saw, was when we were at Meridian.
Yeah, I really miss the daily papers, Mac. I really do, you know, and that's kind of a bummer.
I do too, and so do so many other people, Dale. And I don't know what happened. The newspaper business has gotten just so bad. It's all we're going to have before very long, probably, are digital publications, and I guess that's the way that the world is going. That train is on track, and I don't think we're going to be able to stop it. Do you?
No, I don't. Well, listen, where'd you go after Meridian? You went up in the Delta for a while, and just tell us about the history.
Well, after Meridian, we bought a weekly newspaper in Leland, Mississippi. Stayed there 13 years. That was a good place to be. There was a lot of sports action around there. We had a young kid named Johnny Cooks play a linebacker at Leland High School when I was there. We had some other really fine athletes. Johnny Cooks may truly have been one of the best football players ever in the state of Mississippi, just period. He was an unbelievable athlete. Then I went from there to the Clarion Ledger, where I was a business writer, and then moved over to cover the Capitol, the legislature, and politics. And, of course, I'm still, pounding out a column each week for the Jackson newspaper's the Clarion Ledger perspective section on Sunday. And on the column I've got coming up next week is about the Mississippi Delta Blues that we saw in 60 Minutes not long ago. And then I've already gotten a column written after that about going to Georgia. And my thesis of that is how hard it's going to be for Ole Miss and Mississippi State to compete in the Southeastern Conference in years to come. Now, we've done we've done very well. Mississippi State was the first school ever to be number one in the college football playoff ranking several years ago. Ole Miss, of course, has been in the top 10 this year until that fiasco last week. And I mean, it was a fiasco. But they're still right there, in 13th in the ratings. And both of them have won a national championship in baseball. The Ole Miss women's golf team won a national championship a few years ago. So, we are able to compete right now. Both schools are able to compete. But I tell you what, Dale and Marshall, it's going to get harder and harder with the money that's flowing to these big schools right now, and with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. What do y'all think? What does the future look like, do y'all think, for those two schools?
Oh, I agree with you. I think it's just going to get tougher. I think the competition's going to get tougher. I think that, everybody's competing against each other. I don't know if it's for facilities or what it is, but the money's just not here in Mississippi like it is maybe in Texas and Oklahoma and Georgia, and places like that. We might can compete with, LSU, they're always going to get 5-star athletes, and
because they're the only school in Louisiana that is capable of getting those schools. Those players. Now Tulane is still along and is real strong, but in Georgia, I told somebody last weekend in Georgia, I said, y'all don't understand that the state of Mississippi has 2.9 million people.
That's right.
The Metro Atlanta population is about 11 million. Now, how in the world, and the high school athletic facilities, you ought to see them in the state of Georgia. Yes, during this high school football state, it was doing like a small college. And it's just going to be really hard for us to compete, I think, in the future. That's not being negative. That's just being realistic, I say.
That's the reality for sure. This is Marshall again. I want to kick a question out here, kind of changing the direction a little bit.
Yeah.
I read this morning where darts may come back. How big a deal is that?
Where who might come back?
Dart.
Jackson Dart.
Dart. Ole Miss quarterback. Yeah. I tell you what, I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. He had a bad game last week, not in the first quarter, but after Georgia made their adjustments, they shut him down. I think that's good for Ole Miss. I guess there's a chance if the Manning kid at Texas decides to enter the portal, I would guess Ole Miss would have a shot at him. I don't know. That's certainly just based on nothing but gut instinct. What if Arch Manning decided to move to Ole Miss next year? All right, so he comes in there. I guess he would have 4 years of eligibility left. Isn't that right, Dale? Would that be the situation?
Yeah, but Mac, just knowing the Manning family, their history, I think the boy's going to be at Texas. I think they're trying to tell him he needs to compete.
You think he's going to stay there?
Sure.
He's going to stay there?
Because, I know when Peyton went to Tennessee, Archie said probably the best thing for him is to redshirt his first year. And so, this is basically his red shirt. But I don't like quarterbacks. It's worked out well for Ole Miss, don't get me wrong. But I believe in sticking out and competing. That's kind of the way I was brought up.
Well, I agree, but he's got somewhat of an uphill climb at the University of Texas. The quarterback who's been injured is coming back.
Yeah, that's another situation.
They are also they're signing a 5-star quarterback, supposedly the best in the country. Of course, here's the thing we don't know about Arch, man. He played in a league that was 2A football in Louisiana. We don't really know what his capability is.
Well, Peyton,
Peyton and Eli, we don't know.
Well, they played in the same league, Peyton and Eli did. So,
well, that's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
if you got the ability, you got the ability. I mean, I remember, that he was recruited very, very highly by a lot of teams. I remember Saban went down there with about 2 or 3 of his coaches.
Oh, yeah.
So, they saw something there.
Well, he's got the size. He's got all the attributes. He's got the size. He's been through every Manning passing academy and school and home taught by all the Mannings. So he ought to, he ought to be able to step in somewhere next year and be ready to face the competition, I think. But that remains to be seen.
Well, you've been around Cooper and how silly he is, and we don't know if Arch is like that, but Peyton was just very, very serious, And I just don't know about Arch. I've never been around the young man, but Ole Miss has got a very, very capable backup in the Howard kid that transferred from LSU, because his dad played quarterback at LSU. And so,
Well, I would suppose, Dale, I guess that Sanders is not going to be at Ole Miss next year. Is that your guess? Is that what y'all think?
He's out of time, isn't he?
He's run out of eligibility anyway after this year, hasn't he?
That's correct.
I think he has. Now, he was a graduate and he came in for his 1 year, so that I guess that would be up to him.
That's right.
But there's a good possibility that he might transfer again, and because him being a senior, I think it would be very hard for him to get any playing time. It's just like the boy at Mississippi that transferred from Vanderbilt to Mississippi State that's backing up Will Rogers. Excuse me. He's gotten to play only because Will got hurt.
Guys, is there any chance we're going to see Will Rogers on Thursday night at Starkville?
I think there's a pretty good chance. I think there's a really good chance from what I'm hearing.
Guys, I hate to tell y'all this, but we hit the time wall, guys. I apologize. I had to break up this party because it's going real good. We sure have enjoyed talking to you, Mac. We appreciate
I enjoyed it too, guys. And good luck to y'all. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And let's look for a good ball game in Starkville Thursday night.
Let's get it done. Listen, you hang on, Mac. We're going to be right. We're going to talk to you in just a minute. But Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back with tonight's final segment of the Brouhaha right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody. I'll tell you what, fun guy to talk to, Dale. We enjoyed that. Not you, Mac.
He's a typical newspaper guy. Because you ask him a question and he answers it, and then he says, "What do y'all think?" He comes right back at you.
Yeah, right back at you.
Anyway, so I tried a couple needles at him. When I would say something and he'd say something, I said, "Well, what do you think about it?"
Yeah.
So that was I like Mac's been a good friend for a lot of years.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Anything, we're kind of short on time. We've had a long opening, had a great interview with Mac. Anything here in this final segment you want to throw out there before we cut our folks loose?
I've got a solution for the Michigan thing, okay?
Let's hear it.
I got a solution for it.
All right.
Well, what does the NFL do? The NFL used to send scouts to games back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. They used to bring scouts down, and they'd send one scout in to look at all the signs and, okay, it's going to be a run, going to be a play, and they go back and take it to the coaches. Well, that was the wrong thing to do. So the NFL slopped in and said, well, if y'all going to, do all this stuff, you just can't send them anymore. Well, then they came up with this thing a couple years ago. I don't know how many years ago. They put all the communication in the helmet. Why can't the colleges do that?
That's a great idea.
Just give them Just give them a thing. Okay. Well, write that up for me and let's send it to the NCAA, okay? Would you like to do that?
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
All right.
Where that thing stands, as you probably know, they fired a coach up there over this.
Well, just tell our listeners that we came up with it first. Okay?
Oh, I got you.
If they decide to do it, okay?
Well, the listeners are hearing you now. I do want to think though, but it's kind of interesting. Because of this, they fired a coach at Michigan. Chris Patrick, linebacker coach for this deal. They got Harbaugh suspended for the final 3 games. He can't come to the game. So the NCAA will not conclude this investigation until after the season, but it looks like Michigan is stepping up. And I guess Michigan, who suspended Harbaugh?
I guess a lot of our listeners remember that linebackers coach was the defensive coordinator at Ole Miss last year, and he got fired.
He's got a history of doing silly stuff, doesn't he?
Sure, yeah. So anyway, his defense at Ole Miss was, man, I could have done just as good a job as he did last year, All right, y'all get out of the way and let them score.
All right.
Don't get hurt.
Well.
So anyway. So let me end it before I say goodbye, Dale. Let me end it with this. I have to say something, okay? I have to congratulate someone.
Bring it.
My mother will turn 90 years old this week.
Wow.
And we're having a big shindig Thursday night.
Yeah.
And I just want everybody to know that my mama, who I'm her favorite child, my sisters don't rate, okay? I'm the only child. The others are just kind of in there,
Yes, sir.
So I'm sure my sisters will like that too since they listen to the show. So anyway, so we got at least 4 listeners there, my mama and my 3 sisters. And my wife, she listens sometimes. Yeah. So we got 5, okay?
Yes, sir.
So anyway, so happy birthday, Mom.
I want to wish her a happy birthday too. She's done a good job and raised a great family, and we salute her. Happy birthday. On that happy note, Dale,
all right,
we're about out of time, and we want to remind everybody that you can follow us on Facebook. We're going to have some stuff coming out there about some future guests and some future visitors to Waynesboro you might want to track on. You can also listen in to all the shows we have archived on our YouTube channel, the Brouhaha. But like we talked about, time's come to an end. It's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.